Okay,
So we're starting with the third grade promotion and retention. This is only for at-risk students?
no, well, this is in accordance with Act 20. This was the
Oh,
legislated mandate to have a policy, and Neola came out with their draft policy, and so this is the recommendations that we put together based off of Neola's policy and recommendations, so what we've changed is, so this is not currently a district policy, but it's one that due to state statute, we'll have to have in place. Prior to, so we need it in place before July, correct? July 1st, but the policy doesn't have to, the promotion. Those components don't have to apply until September 1st, 2027. And my recommendation, what I'm hearing from some of the state legislators and so forth, is everything we can push down the road for Act 20. I would recommend that we do, because I think there may be more trailer bills coming through or other pieces to address some of the areas of concern within Act 20. But so you'll see that's why it applies considering for promotion from 3rd to 4th grade effective on September 1st, 2027.
so we have to have this approved by July,
Right,
but don't have to enact it until September of 2027.
at least the promotion portion of it. And
And we don't currently have a policy on 3rd to 4th grade promotion, is that correct?
we have a promotion policy, but it's not specific
For
third to
third to
fourth
fourth
grade
grade.
related to reading.
I guess that was
scores,
one of my questions, is like, why, I thought we had something on promotion, but
Mhm.
that was one of my questions, is why are we just limiting it to 3rd to 4th grade promotion?
Cause that's specifically the statute states we have to have a policy for 3rd to 4th grade promotion as it's related to reading. That's just the political age that they've always heard, well, they need to be able to read by the end of 3rd grade, because then you shift to read to learn instead of learning to read. So they say kindergarten through 3rd grade, you're learning to read, and then 4th grade through 12th grade, you're reading to learn, which you're still learning reading skills all the way through. So it's kind of a misnomer, but that's the common nomenclature, how they approach it. So, in fact, another piece that will be interesting is completed their personal reading plan, and there's a
Yeah, and why is completed in quotation marks? I'm like. Usually when you do that, it leaves a lot open.
they just formatted, my understanding, they formatted it that way just because they're definitions that are in the state statute, like personal reading plan, limited English proficient student, and then completed. Because that's how the state statutes listed it.
Okay,
Um,
so am I to understand that parents don't have to agree?
Everyone else online?
Ed
Yeah,
is
it's
on.
online.
It's online,
And
okay.
Adam isn't able to make it.
I'm so sorry, we're
okay.
staffing.
No big deal.
Oh.
So we just started with
Yep.
the 3rd grade promotion thing, So. Am I understanding correctly that? And I guess it's later in the policy, but. We can. Promote or not promote without parents. Agreeing?
No, let me find, where's that section? Okay, it's promotion. Promotion to 4th grade with, applicable services and supports is more appropriate than retention, yes. Promotion, the students,
I'm looking under,
Yeah,
it's the third page, the top of the third page.
yep,
Based on the comprehensive evaluation of factors above, the
Mhm.
district will make one of the following determinations. One of them is promotion. The district recommends retention with applicable supports and services, but the student's parents do not agree. Or it's
yes, I mean, currently parents would have to.
Agree.
Agree as well, and that's not changing in the statute either, it's saying in consultation, there's several times, even on page 1. At the beginning, that it's by the end of third grade, unless the district in consultation with students' parents believe retention is not in the best interest of the student.
Julia, it would be rare that by third grade, we would ever say to a parent, we recommend retention. If a parent came to us strongly feeling for the following reasons they want to retain their child. We would lean that, we would take some convincing, we'd probably lay out, well, here's how we may feel about, this or that. That's where the parent really is in the control here, but by third grade. I mean, this whole policy was just written into Act 20 as one more hurdle in this mess. It really is. So, what's gonna happen is, this is no different than, we have children that are not reading at grade level right now. They will be promoted, they always are promoted. We can have kids that do an amazing job and are closing that gap and will not, because they're saying they have to be proficient on the forward assessment. Not just like basic or minimal, but proficient. I mean, and it's measuring something completely different than what we've worked on all year with oral fluency. So the stakes are just absolutely ridiculous. As far as thinking that these kids are just gonna fly through that assessment as well as close that gap. What's frightening about this plan is it says, but to go on to fourth grade, you have to have those continued reading supports in place. My God, we already do. We do not need this law to say that those children need intervention in fourth grade. But in some districts, apparently that was not the case.
Yeah,
So these kids are not going to third grade without supports heavily in place to continue this work in reading. I don't know if I'm answering your question exactly, but we would not, it would be very rare that we would say, we want to retain your child, where we have utilized a little flexibility from time to time, has to be with like newcomers who come in. We're not sure of grade placement prior schooling. We look at the birthday, but then we're like, you know what, this is the better fit just based on where, and we work with families on trying to determine that. I wouldn't even call that a retention. It's just best placement now that you're coming into the country. But,
it could just be from school to school too. It wouldn't have to be. I
Well,
mean,
and I've retained 2 of mine, they were both late summer birthdays and. We just determined it was best for them to give them more time, and
right,
that
but
was
were
in
they-
consultation with the
they weren't in
families
third
and-
grade though, were they?
No,
It was
we
prior
did
to
that
third
in
grade. So
kindergarten.
that's why we really haven't ever looked at retention at third grade or older for kids.
The data shows,
but if they're not reading proficient, if they're not reading, how are they keeping up with their other studies if they can't read? I guess that's what I'm saying. You're taking a kid who's not reading well at the third grade level and you're promoting them to fourth grade and they still can't read and they're still expected to read all the material for their other classes. How are they even getting through their other classes? And maybe they're getting reading supports, but are they getting supports for their other classes? Like, I don't know. Reading is the core
It is.
of everything.
There's a lot of scaffolds in there, things like that. The other thing that we have to keep in mind here is when you have a child in reading who is not closing that gap, there could be a special education concern there. There could be a disability.
Yeah.
Okay, so by this allows us to continue to explore that, because rounds and rounds of intervention have to be done where the graph is not improving. And when that's the case, and we've tried this technique and for 12 weeks and nothing, and we've tried this technique and nothing, and
Right,
that's when a referral comes into place. So
Yeah.
typically at this point,
yeah,
I would say it's second to fourth grade is when the bulk of our referrals are happening, because we want to give as many interventions as we can before
Yeah.
we say we need to explore that
Yeah.
there could be a disability here.
yeah,
But by retaining, we're gonna hold this all up, and retaining doesn't change how we would norm at the age for that referral either, so it's really, like I said, we're not gonna recommend that. Now, how do kids keep pace? We're scaffolding in the classroom, a lot of things are visual, I mean, look at us, none of us are forced to read this alone, we're pointing it out, we're talking about it here.
right,
Very similar, things like that, very hands-on curriculum, our science and social studies isn't as text-based anymore as we're experimenting and doing things like that. You know, math, yes, involves some reading, but there are times that things can be read to them, there's a lot of apps on our computer where the test question can be, you know, like you hit this and it's read to them. So we're measuring their knowledge, not their ability to read the statement. And again, we're certainly drilling down as hard as we can on that reading. Keep in mind, they're getting another 30 minutes of small group instruction just at their level in reading a day.
I think the other criteria here is the state statute sets this, where is it at?
so the stuff in blue is what's required in the state statute? Because Neola had
Yeah, Neola had it written a little
language,
bit.
which was simpler,
Mhm.
so where did the blue come from? Like, where did the edits?
What I did was I went back into the state, recommended, you know, like this Act 20 information is, it was, there were more details, and I thought I liked those details more than this
Okay,
abbreviated, but whatever the committee
Yeah, yeah.
feels, I'm
Change
open
it
to
or
that.
adjust it.
I
Okay.
just thought.
I just didn't know where they came from.
I felt like this included more about who would be at the table,
Sure.
why,
Sure,
you know, are not limited to you know what I'm saying, like.
yeah,
I just thought those details are a little bit
Yeah,
better
yeah, yeah.
than Neola took that a little.
Here's, yeah, like, when we look at this term completed, correct me if I'm wrong, but every student who's not at meeting expectations is supposed to have a reading plan, correct?
Correct.
And so the problem that we have here is there's already a disconnect. I don't disagree with what Neola's putting in there that says,
Oh, no, no, I see where you're at. I was thinking on Ames Web. No, this is what's very tricky is in order for the retention, this policy to come into play is if you don't have a reading plan, like
Yeah.
it means you're a fluent reader.
okay,
Okay, that's the only thing that qualifies you for a reading plan is how many words you read in a minute. That's what Act 20 is based on. One criteria, your oral reading fluency. I know. So it's not like, oh, we look at 4 factors. We look at only one. They get 2 passages and a minute and the average of that and where that cut score is. So you can have a child who reads a little slower, beautiful comprehension, does well on our iReady assessment, and we have to go back and tell the parent because they're not reading quickly, they have to have this 5-page PRP and they'll need to be proficient on the forward. Now, chances are they may be okay on the forward because they don't have to read as fast as they can fluently. You can be a fast word caller and pass that and not be proficient on the forward, and does not apply to it.
you could
You
have,
don't get a
so,
PRP.
so you could
Uh-huh,
actually be able to read fluently, but have no ability
Yeah.
to understand what you're reading.
and score at the basic, the lowest level on the forward, and there is no plan. Now, it's recommended that we put interventions in
Unbelievable.
place for these children, and that's the problem, Julia. We want to service these kids, we want to continue, because at 3rd to 4th grade, comprehension becomes the name of the game, not how fast you can read.
Correct,
However, we're gonna have to see how this affects our caseload, because we're gonna be rolling all these third graders who are not reading X number of words per minute into plans in fourth grade. We also have students that will not be proficient on this exam due to comprehension and higher level skills that we need to get in place. Do we have the bandwidth to service all the kids?
I was
I
just
don't know
gonna,
yet.
I was gonna ask that question, I'm like,
Uh-huh.
how,
Well-
I mean, do we anticipate like half of our kids doing, like.
You know, but this is why the state, these kids will not get a plan if they do not pass the forward. Does it mean they probably need some intervention, some small group targeted focus? Yes. But we've always provided that. I hope we continue to have the bandwidth to keep doing what we've been doing well.
My concern is the Neola language, I'm getting back to the policy here on this piece. So scores at grade level. We know that even now with the standards having been adjusted, the meets expectations is still above grade level. Norm, what a lot of people don't realize is the old cuts, to be considered proficient, you would basically need to score 2 grade levels above what you were testing at. So really that proficiency cut, if you crosswalk it around with a grade level norm, was in 3rd grade, was actually around 5th grade level. So to be proficient in 3rd grade, you needed to be 2 grade levels above grade level norm. And then Underly did change because Nate's going away, and she kind of addressed, and
Yeah.
I've been, to be frank, beating up, and I've talked about this a lot, how it's not matching with grade level norms. It gives the false impression that all these kids in Wisconsin can't
Correct.
read proficiently,
Yes.
which
Right.
isn't true, because the reality is, once you hit the 25th percentile to the 75th, that's considered grade level average. And if you can read within that range, those kids are comprehending well, they're doing well, they're fine going into the next, so they don't need supports typically. What
Yeah,
schools look at it in most cases, the interventions and the supports are typically targeted for 25th percentile below. I believe we might go to the 30th, is that right? The 30th, but that's because we're a little bit higher achieving district, we can afford to. Most districts, they're not even looking at interventions unless they're that 20th percentile or below. And those are the kids who are struggling readers.
yeah,
But the state's given the impression that, oh my gosh, there's 60% of the kids who aren't proficient, and that's just not accurate. So I don't know if, and I know the state's going to revisit the cut scores. I just got notice that I was selected to be on the panel for that.
Oh, good.
For the superintendent seat, but then what I will push for is grade level norm should be proficiency. If that, what does that look like? What is actual proficient? So that we're communicating
Yeah,
accurately, that yes, your kid's in the 30th percentile. But they're able to access, handle the material, and are there things they can work on and develop further? Yeah, but they're going to be fine
Mhm.
at that next grade span.
And as Jason is saying,
But-
so Ames Web, the fluency assessment that the state mandates we give is set at the 25th percentile. So a child scoring at the 24th or lower mandatorily has a plan to
but
work
we're
on.
setting it at
fluency.
30.
Prior to us having to use one metric, we would triangulate 3 pieces of information,
Can't we
looking
still
at
do that?
30th percentile. We do at times when we can have space in our caseload, but we have so many kids that are qualifying just based on oral reading fluency, or in kindergarten, it's how many letters can you call out in a minute? So we have children that know all 52 lowercase, uppercase letters, can sit here and tell you all of them, but you give them a string, and I'm talking capitals and lowercase, fine print across, we have to use that and say, go. We're really not even supposed to point and expect, and in a minute, if they don't clear that, they have to have a 5-page improvement plan. So it's really, it's the assessment that isn't ideal. They're gonna be renorming Ames Web as well. But what Jason is, it's a clear point that the 25th is where that's set. Yes. Do we include students who also have other deficits that may score at the 30th percentile or 32nd, but oh my gosh, there's so many other skills not in place? Yes, if our caseloads we can bring them in, we are bringing them in. If not, Teachers are working with them with direction from the reading specialist in the classroom. So we are servicing as many kids as we can. We have one reading specialist at Tibbetts this year. She has 75 kids on her caseload. So and keep in mind, 75 individual plans for those kids. That's greater than any special ed teacher in the
Right.
district.
Right.
So we have to understand, like, this is what the state has brought on. We probably would have been servicing 50 of those kids. 25, we feel we could have met their needs a different way, but the state is saying now you have to do it this way. But what Jason's saying is, those cuts, we may clear this, but we're not gonna get them on forward with those cut scores the way they are right now. But a child who does not succeed on forward is not part of this plan that's in front of us. This policy does not apply to them. They have to not have succeeded on their PRP and not succeeded on the forward.
Yeah, that's why I'm asking, why are you recommending us use forward language
Okay,
in this?
because this
policy?
sentence, scores at grade level in reading on a summative assessment is vague.
Right, but it gives us a lot of flexibility.
No, it doesn't, because the law says they have to pass the forward exam.
Okay, so that's why it's in the law says they have to pass
Yep.
forward. Yeah.
So if they change that exam or the name of the exam, we'll have to go in and update this, but to me, I could give an end of year summative, and if a parent says, well, they did just fine on that, I don't want that door open.
And the problem with this, as the board exam cuts are set now. I'll have to look at the new crosswalk, but they only change by about 10 percentile points, so that means. You're needing to score at the 55th percentile. In order to be testing out of that. Which, I mean, just statistically, 55% of the students in the state aren't.
Who are
going to score that
presently
level,
reading
yeah.
below the 25th on just.
Yeah, and keep in
passing.
mind, that's not because, oh my gosh, Wisconsin kids are so far behind in reading. We're in the top 5 in the nation on reading achievement. In the country,
Mhm.
so you're scoring. You have to score above the 55th percentile in one of the top 5 states in the country on
Mhm.
reading proficiency or reading achievement. So that's why they need to, when we're saying needs expectations, what are the reading skills or the skill level needed for that student to be successful at that grade level?
Right,
And it's not aligned that way right now, so that's.
yeah, cause it's based on one metric, right?
Right,
Mhm.
That's ridiculous, who made this law?
all parties are involved, so I'm just as, Evers didn't
No
veto
educators,
it,
like-
Jill
like-
No
Underly,
educators were
oh,
involved?
DPI was involved with it.
I don't think
But-
DPI had a hand in writing this law. They have to implement the
No,
law.
I give them fault for signing off on. Not pushing back hard.
They probably, the fight should have been months ago.
Yeah.
What's interesting is Julia, just for this policy, just for this
Adam
retention
is
policy.
calling me, do you want me to
Yeah.
answer it?
Sure.
Hey, Adam. Well, I'm in the policy meeting. Yes. Oh. Okay, okay. Okay, thanks, bye. I didn't know if he was calling to like try and
Chime
get
in
in or what, but no, it was somehow so.
Okay,
That's all right.
I mean, even this one small part of it, there's 40 questions that DPI, frequently asked questions, just on this policy.
Yeah,
That we can't even get resolution on, that it's just it's written so vaguely that we're just struggling to figure it out, so. But the bottom line is, this policy just needs to be in place by the 1st of July. It does not take effect, you'll see, until September 1st, 2027, which I
which
read.
we're not really voting on Neola policies as a whole.
So this one would be outside of, we would adopt this.
We would adopt it
Skipping the line
early.
again, yes.
But, okay,
But legally, we have to have, this one has to
Okay.
be on the
all right.
docket, you know, it has to be in place
So it
by,
has to be in place, but we don't have to enforce it.
right? So that's another
For
great
2 more
news,
years.
right? And we had a little sidebar this morning about that, because there's a little scuttlebutt about that, because then does that mean you're not gonna provide interventions in 4th grade until this goes into effect? In this district, absolutely not. we presently have a summer school offering, and we send letters of personal invitation to every child who is getting reading supports in kindergarten, first, second, and third grade rolling through. That you could take this class and still take summer school, but for 1 hour, you're gonna do reading, or 1 hour, you're gonna do math. But that programming will not meet these stipulations, because what they wanna see is I'm a reading specialist, I have 4 students, they're here for this 30 minutes. We don't know how many days a week, how many weeks of the summer, but just think of the cost for our district to run every 30 minutes, groups of 4 are getting their intervention all summer long. We will look into, that's what we're waiting guidance on from the state, like nobody knows what that's supposed to look like. That would then start the summer of 2028. But until then, we do offer summer school for our low readers. We have something in place. It doesn't look like what this policy is vaguely implying. But we'll see what happens. So until
Okay.
then, those things are in place, interventions in 4th grade and summer school.
Okay, so we have summer school and they're still getting interventions in the classroom.
In 4th grade, yes, and not even in the classroom.
Only in 4th grade?
No, all the grades.
Oh, okay.
This is put in place because some school districts were giving them in 4th and 5th grade. We do. So these students, so our students, we will be in compliance with everything here, even prior to September 1st, 2027, with the exception of intensive summer school, because nobody knows what is defined by that.
Right.
And that will be a cost to the district to start running something that intensive. We do not need to provide busing for it. And right now, Julia, I probably send home 40 invitations to come to summer school for 3rd grade, 3rd grade going to 4th grade. And we'll be lucky to get 8 students to agree
Why
to
do
that.
we have so many kids who, I mean, let's set the ESL kids aside.
Mhm.
Is that the majority of them? Is the ESL kids, or are,
No, it'd be a portion of them, but certainly no.
Okay. so why do we have so many kids who are struggling to read at grade level?
Well, it's a good question. Well, keep in mind, we do work to set our bar a little high. Right now, it's because we're looking at that oral fluency piece, and that is the only qualifier for this year. Keep that, prior to that, we would have had less students receiving intervention when it wasn't just based on how quickly you read.
Okay,
Because now that is the only factor we're allowed to use, is that. Prior to that,
but we don't have to use that for 2 more years, right? Can
No.
we continue for the two more
No,
years?
we are using that. That's the only factor we're using, is the oral reading fluency. Prior to that, I would say we were servicing kids at the 30th, sometimes even 35th level and lower. So we were casting a really wide net to make
Right.
sure every child was
Right.
getting what they needed and launched.
Right,
Through that process, many students ease out of tier 3 interventions. There are some that will continue throughout their education because they do not have a disability. They just find reading that challenging, but that number decreases each year. We've launched these kids. We will explore, do they have a disability? If not, then we have those tier 3 supports all the way through high school, if needed, for our students. There's just a small number that's kind of where they are. And without that support, they would struggle more, but we're continuing to work with them. And Act 20 or not, we will continue to do that in this district. Act 20 has just made it a little bit more challenging with the rules and laws that they've put into play.
so we've got the required curriculum being used in the classrooms now for Act 20.
We
Or-
have what I feel is a solid curriculum being utilized in the classroom. We do, after 11 years with this need, we're starting the process of looking at what are the new tools out there that could be brought in. The state has a list of, here are things we suggest you look at.
Cause didn't part of Act 20 require you to use,
The science of reading based
Yes.
curriculum and or crosswalk over what you have, how it aligns with the science of reading. Which we've crosswalked that over, but we've also put into the next 2-year budget cycle, the $500,000 for
Right.
adoption of new ELA curriculum.
and is that curriculum much heavier on phonics?
It will be. In fact, I can share with you the decision our committee has made moving forward, because keep in mind, we're also taking our 100 teachers, admin, special ed teachers, speech pathologists, will cycle through that 50-hour course right now on the science of reading. And we've been doing a lot of work in PD on that prior to this, but now this is the course that we have to complete per the Act 20 law. Phonics will be one of the things we delve into. We do have a phonics program that we have been utilizing, which is strong. We are adopting a new program next year in kindergarten through 3rd grade. That's called UFly, stands for University of Florida. It's a wonderful program. We've been using it as a tier 3 intervention with our students who haven't been as successful, or needed reteaching with phonics skills, things like that. So we will be integrating that in next year, because we do feel like we have found where there is a missing component that we need to beef that up a little bit. And in doing so, we feel that we will see our numbers come down. I will tell you, when we work with CISA 6, a consultant who comes and has been doing our training, there are districts where every 1st grader qualifies. Every 1st grader qualifies. So we're not in that position, but I don't think the state was ready for that. So our numbers do not look as bad as many of the districts around us, but we got in, we all tested, we all looked to the left and right and like, how many plans do we have to write? No one knew until we test drove the assessment this year, the law, everything. So I think as we go into next year, we're also, we're finding like, we don't often have our students pick up passages and read as quickly as they can in 1 minute. I mean,
Well, yeah, if
we
you don't
needed to
practice
look at
Right.
that, like, okay, we are,
Right.
fluency is important. We
Right.
were certainly teaching fluency, but if this is the assessment we have to give, we need students to understand that. We need to understand when they take this test, you're going to read this way. When you take this test, you're going to read up and down as if you are reading an Oriental menu. Like, it doesn't make any sense even how these tests are laid out. We're getting smarter at that process with our students and
Yeah,
assessing them. So I don't feel we have more students qualifying than any district in the area. I don't think it's, wow, our curriculum is just horrible, horrible, horrible. Not at all.
yeah,
But we have come together and said, based on the science of reading, different techniques with phonics, we feel that this will be a stronger program to bring in and supplement. Then, but again, we're and this was a very frugal program to bring in that gets extremely good results. With that in mind, we then, as we evaluate new curriculum, can decide, are we keeping this because we like how it's working, so therefore we're just buying a system that covers more comprehension and the other elements? Or do we have to spend and get this whole comprehensive, in which case we would take this program and use it for our tier 2 and tier 3 kids again? But getting teachers trained on this program will be a good benefit, and it could even be a cost savings if we don't end up needing the full $500,000, because we've already brought in something that will kind of lift our phonics program to the next level. We did not want to wait on that.
yeah. So the science of reading is a proponent of phonics learning.
It definitely is.
Okay,
One of the things that came through in this law is, when, and you maybe remember when you read with your children, I mean, we have to think back, like, they come to a word they don't know, and it's a picture book, there's lots of pictures of horses or whatever, and you might say, well, let's look at the picture, what's happening in the story? Like, let's use our context clues there. The law now states that we are no longer able to cue students to look at a picture and think about what would make sense. We can't say, what would make sense in this sentence. We can't say, things like that. What we do have to do is, with every situation, we have to work with decoding first. Okay,
well, yeah,
and decoding used to be one of the tricks in the repertoire, but that's the one. So it's illegal to prompt children now to say, look at the picture or what have you. So
yeah, I mean, all of those prompting things certainly slow down fluency. when they're constantly being told to look at context and pictures rather than learn to read the word for the word itself, which is more what phonics is based on. I don't,
We were phonics kids.
We
We
were
had
phonics kids.
workbooks, we had phonics, you and I were.
right,
Yeah, and we're making some other curricular choices, what we call our decodable books are coming back, like this old, remember the Dick and Jane
Yeah.
type series where.
yeah,
This lesson was all on short I, so there's as
Right.
many short I words that you could sort of string together to make a story. They're much improved now.
yeah.
But as we work with the phonics skill, kids will go into text that will address that application.
Mhm.
And then we also have our libraries of just books at their level, so then they can just not be so drilled in on short I or
Yeah.
long E or whatever.
Mhm.
So, but that's just one little part of what the science of reading involves. I mean, there's just a lot of the cognition of what part of the brain is doing what and why we work on vocabulary in this manner. Just the affirmation that students being read aloud, even in 5th grade, having stories read to them that are higher than what their readability level is,
Mhm.
to deepen comprehension sets the stage for when they move on to text that's harder, because you can comprehend, of course, when you're hearing things orally, much more than when you were just reading it. So it's getting kids ahead there, the oral language part of it, and getting kids rhyming words and all of that. So it's all merging together, and our teachers are doing a really great job with the program, but.
Okay.
All right, we digress. So any other questions or thoughts with the policy?
So am I understanding that? Right now, we're looking at A and B, which have been edited, so we're looking at all of C through H as well,
Mhm.
correct? So those would be all included.
So that's a good question, because the way Neola works, Amy, these parentheses,
Sure.
they're all optional. Would you like all these included?
Yes, they do need to be there. These are almost verbatim. The C through H was more verbatim from the law
Oh.
versus I went back and added more of the law to A and B so that there's consistency there.
We should, because Neola has this thing where you can't change it more than
I know,
like
so I
10% or
think
whatever. So, but if you're taking the actual Act 10 law
Mhm.
and applying it here, we shouldn't have any issues there, right?
I feel like Neola really abbreviated that. I don't know
Yeah.
why, but
Yes, more of a summary.
yeah. Or didn't specifically list the name of the
Yeah.
assessment, because I feel that leaves it open to interpretation, which it's not.
So, Ed, do you have anything that you want to comment on?
As I understand this, we need to have this in place, even though it doesn't take effect until 27.
Yes.
Shouldn't we put a numbering system that's applicable to our current policy? Structure versus that Enolia number? Is that correct or not?
Yeah, how have you been handling these? Yeah, that's a good question, Ed. The Neola numbering system doesn't match with ours.
So normally after the board approves a policy, I assign it a number that's available in our current series. So I would assign it a different number, and then once we adopt everything, it would then switch to the 5411.
Oh, that's what you're talking about, okay.
I just want to make sure that legally we're covered, because this will be part of our actual current policies that are, in effect. So that's all, I just want to make
The
sure.
retention portion is what will take effect in
And we have other
2027,
policies
yeah,
on retention already, so it's just gonna slide right in.
It'll be right in there.
yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions?
No, I appreciate the background. I really wasn't that up to speed on it, so I do appreciate that education, so.
on the mid-year enrollment or transfers. The student transfers into a school. Enrolled as a fourth grade student and provided records indicate the student may have met requirements to be retained in third grade. To be retained in third grade, the district shall provide all supports and services that the student would have otherwise received. So am I understanding that this says that if a student comes in the fourth grade, but we find out that they were recommended for retention in the third grade and we didn't do that and that didn't happen? So we're just gonna put them in fourth grade and give them supports, is that the plan?
I think what they're saying is, yes, but it doesn't necessarily mean retention was recommended. It means that they came to us and had a personalized reading plan that wasn't completed. Then yes, we would, and this is what's so crazy, we would do this anyways. When we have a low struggling reader, we would be scooping them into our intervention program. We would do our own assessments, we would find this out. What's tricky is like, if they, let's say a child arrived right now, we've already done our spring assessments, with our Ames Web program, what have you. The window is still open, chances are we would still screen that child just to see, oh, they're at the 20th percentile. Phone calls would be made to that school if records haven't come to say, do they presently have a PRP? Like, we would do the detective work, but what they're saying is, we by law have to give the supports as if they qualified in our district for a PRP, and we certainly would. We certainly would.
Okay. All right. So looks like the next one then is finishing the Neola 9000 series. Jody, is that the last three? Advertising, high school, 9700, 9800, and 9800.01? Is that,
Four.
oh, there's
So there's
four?
9700, 9700.01,
Oh, okay.
9800.
I missed that one. I missed reviewing that one. But in the future, if when we're, not completing an entire thing in the agenda or something, just tell us where we left off.
Yeah, but that I did this time. Was that helpful?
did?
Yeah.
On the agenda or somewhere else?
In the message that you got when I shared it.
Oh, I missed that.
If
Sorry.
you want me to notify you in a different way.
No,
then-
I just missed that.
This we could put in parentheses the number range, like where we list
I
9,000
don't often
series.
necessarily read
Right,
Okay,
thank you, Amy.
that. I
Thank you.
just,
Thanks, Jason.
thanks, Amy.
Yes, thank you guys. Good luck with the
I just
900.
go straight to the agenda
Sure.
but that's me. So I just need to retrain myself. Thank you. Oh, so we need to start with 9700.
Yes.
All right. I did not read through this one because I stood.
And this one we discussed at the last meeting, and
Oh,
you guys kind of gave us, there was a lot of decisions made during that meeting, so you said, hey, can you guys go and mark this up with our decisions that we've made already? And
oh,
then we'll kind of review it.
okay,
I don't think we quite finished it,
okay.
so that's why you'll see some of the strike throughs and things in this policy.
Okay, so this is kind of related to the next one, right? Or one of our other ones that we're reviewing with regard to advertising and didn't WYAA pass a law that high school students can now use their name and likeness for?
Yeah, they passed the Constitution amendment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how does this conflict with what the WIAA is allowing?
It might,
That I-
Neola usually does 2 updates a year, so.
I mean, if you've got a kid who is a superstar at the high school level and Nike wants to sign him,
Yeah.
You
Where
know,
would that conflict with this policy then?
is the policy of the board that students, staff members, and district facilities not be used for advertising or promoting the interests of any non-school related agency or organization? It's the first sentence. That would be, to me, that would be a direct conflict with what a student is allowed to do in the WIAA.
Oh, see, I wouldn't. Which section is that under?
It's it's the very first sentence of
Yeah.
9700.
So I wouldn't necessarily. Without the approval.
Okay,
So that would be like,
okay,
and you see it sometimes where there's a professional athlete who does an advertisement in a generic jersey. That's because they don't have the approval of the NBA or the team to use their
yes,
field or their facility. So in order to do, so that wouldn't preclude a student who, let's say we had the best basketball player in the country.
yeah,
Come through Elkhorn, they could still go do whatever NIL, whatever advertisements they want, but if they're going to use school facility or school, they would need to have permission first.
oh, okay,
But that's why, yeah, I wouldn't view it as anything,
okay,
nothing from the NIL that I saw would conflict with it. I think that's a very good question though. Now, that's something, if they're like, hey, we want to come and shoot an advertisement for the student on the field, then I think that's a discussion, conversation around
yeah,
the facility usage and so forth, and they need to get permission first.
right. Okay, all right, so we're just. That would be a district administrator decision.
That's what we put in recommendation, if we want to
Yep.
change that, then we.
No, I don't think it. I think it can be that at that level. Referendum advocacy, okay, I haven't read through this one because I missed it, So, okay, so this makes sense from the school district, but this is not applying to a school board member, correct? It's just the school district as a whole.
Yeah, I think we reviewed a prior policy that had kind of what you're thinking with
Yeah.
the referendum advocacy for school board members.
Okay. That's not any different than what we currently practice, correct? What's written here? Okay,
No, I think it creates a policy, but really where. Just because we have a policy, I'm trying to think from a legal enforcement standpoint. What's there to prevent? Whether it's an advocacy group or a vote no group, it would be, I do have our two most common logos trademarked. So you could say, hey, you're utilizing that to give the appearance of being an official district website
Right.
and so forth.
so
We need to
that kind of leads me
discontinue
to,
that use.
that. What was that group? Not Friends of Elkhorn, what was that group called?
Friends of Elkhorn Community.
Friends of Elkhorn Community, were they
Yeah.
using our logo?
No, not that
They
I
weren't,
saw, no.
okay,
And we have a lot of, shirt groups, vendor groups who have
Right.
used our logo and haven't. Most people don't know it's trademarked unless you like send them a letter. And I wouldn't do that. I think the purpose of us getting those trademarked was so someone couldn't make a minute document to make it look like it's coming from the district,
sure,
if that makes sense, like
Yeah.
what we had happen with the book challenge.
right.
And I don't think that was
It
malintent.
wasn't malintent,
just
no,
I
they
think it
just,
did
it
give
was
it,
out of ignorance.
yeah, it just made it look like a district document, yeah.
Talking about. Vendors that. Use our logo, cause there's a bunch of companies that
Mhm.
use our logos for printing and stuff like that. What do other schools do? Do they? Limit the number of vendors or do they have to get written permission to use? Or what do other districts do on that?
That's a great question. For most, I'd have to ask, I'll bring that up with my superintendents the next time we meet, but I haven't heard of other schools limiting or
Okay,
selling license fees for it and so forth.
okay.
Usually I think most bill, hey, the more we get our,
Yeah, as long as it's
Recognition
the
out
right
there and so
version
forth.
of the logo, you know, like.
yeah.
Those get updated, we always wanna make sure that we're using the correct version and not somebody's not using the old bull mule.
Yeah, well, and that's what I've seen when I go to stores too, that.
Right,
And technically, that's not our logo, so they're not violating anything, but you're
yeah,
right.
but they're representing it as our logo
Mhm.
and we want.
I would rather them use the right logo.
Yeah, I'd rather them use the right logo and I'd like to protect the integrity of, you know, cause logos are developed for a reason. And they're changed for a reason, so. It's just from a marketing standpoint, it's a good idea to make sure that what's being used is correct.
Well, I could speak to. Like I've seen, when I see those stores that have the more generic, maybe it's, hey, can we share our. We'd like to,
Yeah.
share our actual
Right,
logo with your vendors, so you guys are getting the right
Right.
ones, yeah,
yeah,
okay.
and then. Yeah, I vaguely remember covering this now. Did you have anything, Ed, any comments that you wanted to make on this one?
No, I don't. I think you guys must have reviewed this at some length, and I was not at that meeting, so
Yeah,
I'm not seeing anything that I'm particularly concerned about, so.
Do we, well, currently, we don't let them.
yeah,
I just had a parent complain on this when it was a group that was handing out. Bibles at the middle school, and whenever it happens, we let them know, they usually stand on the sidewalks and hand it out. And my concern, and the parents wasn't even so much the. Handing out of the material, I often will get. I'll get complaints both ways. One, there were people that, our kids didn't know who they were, and they're handing out, little Bibles, and then two, I'll get complaints. Your kids were so disrespectful because I saw them throwing Bibles away, or. Cause they'll take the little books and they'll,
Right.
throw them away, so,
right,
I don't know, this policy would allow, and we do allow people to post in the. Public areas, but I don't know if we wanna open up
well.
but we do distribute.
I guess my problem with it is that it doesn't define, it doesn't limit what can be distributed. It just says literature, well. I mean, there could be a group that is promoting smoking marijuana and. They're handing it out to kids, like,
But it's only after they've got advance permission, correct?
Says advanced permission of the principal, yeah. I think we might want some language in there limiting the. Basically granting this individual the ability to use their discretion based on the content, age appropriateness of the material. Or,
yeah, I guess it's with advanced permission, but. I mean, you could have a principal that. Doesn't see anything wrong, I mean, hopefully we wouldn't hire somebody like that, but you could end up having a principal.
well, I think their concern's gonna be more of a First Amendment right. If I let this group do it, I have to let all groups do
Got
it.
it.
That's why I think we need something in there, allow them to limit that
Yeah,
age appropriate,
yes,
will not cause a disruption, or something. Cause that's what the courts have ruled, First Amendment rights get limited when they cause a disruption to the learning environment. Or the school, and if there's a reasonably foreseeable disruption that would be created, then we can.
yeah, cause this is allowing during or after school.
But I think this gets to, and what this is
Yeah.
probably more intended is like, oh, the. Elkhorn Girls Youth Basketball Club wants to hand flyers out to the kids.
Right.
So you have to have
right,
a permissible way to let them
yeah,
do it, yeah. All right, I think if we put some verbiage in on there that would allow them to limit it, that would be good.
um. Well, does the next paragraph address that? Staff or students may be permitted to distribute or post literature regarding. Or on behalf of non-school sponsored organizations or activities in such a manner as described in this policy and in a manner that does not disrupt or interfere with educational activities.
Mhm.
And is not done in a manner that conveys the message or endorsement or approval of the school or district or the group of message. So maybe that covers it.
I see what you're saying, yeah. I agree.
As long as we, keep that in there. I think that paragraph covers it.
I agree.
Okay,
I'm sorry, I hadn't read ahead on this. Five, 722, is that one we've looked at?
No,
Yeah, it's hard, was that another reason that why we. Were delaying on this one because we hadn't even looked at 5722?
I just think we just didn't finish it.
Okay. No materials from any profit-making organization to distribute it for students to take home to their parents. Do we wanna? Leave it at that, or do we wanna check unless authorized by the district administrator? I'm just trying, I don't know if there are situations where. Like an AAU team wants to send literature home or, AAU is a profit-making venture.
Normally, when we get inquiries like that, we always offer to email our families.
Okay,
So it's very rare that we're sending
okay,
outside organizational flyers home with students. I don't think we really ever do it.
we post them, we let them post it in the
Mhm.
public area, lead flyers to hand out. And or we even post it on like our social media page if it's an opportunity for the kids.
so we would. Not want to include unless authorized by the district administrator on that, is that correct?
I think we go ahead,
Just eliminate not sending that stuff home with the kids? It's profit making
Oh.
versus nonprofit,
I
nonprofit.
think I'd go ahead and check unless there might be some compelling reason that we're not
Thinking of,
thinking of, yeah.
okay,
And this is kind of reflect, because I do get those, I'm the one who receives those phone calls and the
mhm,
principals don't like to. Yeah, they like me to make that decision.
Sure.
And then.
yeah, I'm fine with option 2. Are you okay with this next section, Jason?
The social funds are not. Granted, those are, we need to commission criteria exception addition this year. Let's take this. That reflects our practice, that's fine. This is the piece that I'm hung up on, cause we put.
Yeah,
the funds go into like a district maintained and Fund 21.
right.
To meet the permission criteria districts. Unless this is still related to outside groups fundraising. Cause it's still under letter D. So is this section? Is this just related to that letter D, which is the outside groups?
Is there an E afterwards?
Yes.
Yeah. So I think, so in that case, then, yeah,
And
we're
that
not
makes sense.
responsible for it, it's not a special account of the district. Cause it's like the Tibbetts PTO or PTA. Yep, you guys can raise funds, you can do your fundraiser here, we're not responsible for it in any way, shape or form.
Right,
Okay. That makes sense to me then.
okay.
We kind of. Oh, this is also prizes.
I mean, some of our scholarships do discriminate because they. Right, don't we have? Because they discriminate on, well, maybe it's not a protected
They have
class,
selection criteria.
they have selection criteria, but they also. Do we have any that like designate male or female?
Aren't those run through the scholarship foundation though?
Yes,
There.
they are, but the scholarship foundation is,
And it is a separate entity.
yeah. But it specifically says scholarships. I'm just wondering,
Yeah, I think there's some criteria that it might be that this scholarship was for a female student going into the field of. I'd have to double check.
yeah,
on that, so-
I'm just wondering, I was on the scholarship committee for a few years, but I
I don't
don't
remember that
remember.
when I was going through it with my daughter last year. I don't recall any that were.
Okay. Okay,
Mm.
so none of the criteria would affect any protected classes, correct? We should,
No,
I
and
don't-
these would have to be district issued scholarships.
Okay.
Or prizes or awards.
okay,
So and that's where that's why at first I thought, well, scholarships aren't even run through us, but we do have. Prizes or awards that they give out or hand out, so basically it's just, you have to not. You wouldn't discriminate or put that selection criteria for anyone.
so the statement underneath would be an option.
These are the options, yeah.
I just don't wanna get into, I'm not sure I like that option. I don't wanna get into a situation where. If a particular group that has not traditionally been represented, say. Hispanic in the, cause, you know, that would be the minority group that I would. I just don't wanna get into a situation where we're now saying. This scholarship can only go to a Hispanic student, or. I don't wanna get into the race-based stuff.
I don't think, I would recommend that we. Just, I don't know if we, I would recommend we strike all that, I don't think we need to. Adopt any of those. Options.
Yeah, I don't like,
Yeah, because, I mean, what's the district's participation right now? I mean, what role are we in giving out scholarships?
Not really much of a role at all in relation to the actual
Except-
scholarships coming from us. We do have people who are on the scholarship foundation. Selection committee and so forth, but
except that. the scholarship foundation is one thing and it's a
Mhm.
separate entity.
Right,
But then the people who actually make the decisions on who gets those scholarships is nobody on the scholarship committee.
Correct.
So those are district employees.
most of them, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, yeah, I don't like any of those options.
So just strike all those. Yeah, we're okay with this language up here, right?
Yeah,
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 One little
I just-
paragraph in the middle there, that's not an option. Just,
this one right here.
yep,
which one?
it's just saying that we'll provide our non-discrimination policy.
Oh, got it.
And awarding prizes or scholarships. So that way, if we have a group
Yeah.
that, hey, we want to give this scholarship,
Yeah,
and if you're wanting to utilize us,
yeah,
and it's discriminatory in some fashion,
yeah, okay,
then they're always welcome to distribute or do it however they want, not through that vehicle.
yeah, and discriminatory on a protected class, because they should be allowed to make
Well, see, here's,
requirements.
yeah, and not all of the scholar, because there's certain churches that have a scholarship, so they
That is
present a
true.
scholarship night for our. Like, here's the Lutheran.
Yes.
You know, from our congregation, and we allow them to present it that night, but our scholarship committee is not selecting.
Right,
The kids are awarded the
That is
scholarship from their
true,
group.
that is true, our scholarship committee is only selecting like the purple and gold and the,
Yeah, they're not doing all of them, and but some of the scholarship providers, they select. Do you guys wanna select them, or do you want us to?
Right.
Do it, so they'll delegate that to the committee
yeah,
in some cases. I guess we'll just have to let them know, if you're wanting the committee to delegate it, they're not.
yeah, you can't discriminate on any of the
based on
protected
any of that
classes.
criteria, right,
You can have other criteria, but,
yeah,
yeah,
okay. All right,
sale of school supplies. It's just funny, like, some of this just seems so random and like, what the heck? Do we sell school supplies anymore?
I mean,
we do
technically,
their in and out account, it's a,
like I'm thinking like our binders or.
yeah.
I mean, years ago, there used to be a school store.
But this is by organizations other than the school district.
Oh, got it.
So I've seen like school stores that were run by future business
Uh-huh,
leaders, things like
uh-huh.
that. Okay. I don't see anything wrong with keeping this in there. I don't see it as something that's totally applicable to us right now.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, surveys and questionnaires. Policy 2416, we haven't addressed that.
Policy, right?
Do we, when we get to these other policies that are referenced and ones that we're looking at now,
Mhm.
is there? I mean, say we make a big change to policy 2416.
Mhm.
Are we keeping those numbers the way they are? Or you said you kind of renumbering them?
Under our current practice.
Yeah,
I create my own number for a policy,
okay,
but with Neola, we would stick with their number.
okay, so we're not gonna have to go back and
No.
change
No.
another policy, okay,
No, just those ones that were kind of like skipping the line, like the Act 20 policy that
Yeah.
we just talked about.
Okay.
So we'll give that a new number,
Hmm.
and then when we
Oh,
adopt Neola,
temporarily,
yeah,
we'll give it a new number.
yeah,
So that it complies
Then
with
it'll
what
go
we're
to the
currently
it'll
doing.
go-
number. Yeah,
Got it, okay,
and there were a few policies that we chose just not to adopt,
yes,
that we obviously
Right.
went back, those wouldn't be included, but,
yeah, okay,
okay.
all
Any
right.
other questions on 9,700?
Yeah, you good with this, Ed?
Yes, I'm good with it.
Okay.
All right, what was the next one? then?
9700.01 advertising and commercial activities, which is somewhat related to this last one. I think we would have to go with option 2 because we currently do have paid commercial advertising on school district facilities,
Correct.
so. Yeah, mostly on the direct advertising, like signage and billboards is scoreboards, you know. That kind of thing,
Yeah, we do all this.
yep. Ads in school publications with the yearbook.
Yeah, I would include all those.
Under C, under indirect advertising, the second point there. It should be educational. Education value, it's educational value.
You know, they really should get Grammarly.
yeah.
I know,
And that's-
I find so many,
That's the tricky part, 'cause it's like, I can go through and
right,
fix all this, but I don't know if that's even gonna carry over. When
Yeah.
we
When they
When
then
they
go and. then
go
it's
and
different,
generate
yeah.
this all for us. Because we'll turn it over to them and say, this is what we've decided. Then they go
Got it.
into production,
Yeah.
which takes a number of weeks, and then it'll become live on our website.
well. We can always.
We'll put it in there, you know. Let's see,
Yeah,
I would be okay with. Any of those.
is this, the films or materials, is this specifically referring to
The advertisement.
advertising? Because this. Would, to me, it would fall. For classroom use, you know, would. Fall in a different area, but. As long as this is specifically referring to. Advertising, I'm just trying to think.
I'll share an example, like I did an assembly in New Glarus. That was put on by an outside organization, they would come in and. Present it for free. And it was sponsored by the armed services, I can't remember which branch.
Sure.
And they had ads in there, embedded in there.
Yes.
I actually got some complaints from parents because they felt like I was putting all their kids through a recruiting video.
Oh,
So, but that was New Glarus where I was living outside
Yeah.
of Dane County. So
Yeah.
they had a different, you know, things that they would complain about. So I think that's what that's, It doesn't, I can't think of a lot of examples, that's just one that came up that had like embedded ads in it, but there are. Things that come up, hey, we've got this great anti-bullying film that we'll do for your school, you guys can share it, and then they'll embed sponsor. Ads or things like that, so. I think having that verbiage there is good because
Yeah.
it's still.
Yeah,
But by policy, you're saying, hey, if you're gonna show this media or these films. You gotta make sure there's not undesirable propaganda.
right. So, under D, market research. Give me some context on this one.
Hellman's Mayo several years ago did like, handed out samples, and I think they may have had a little survey there, I don't know why, but. That could be, at the football game, and they did like $1,000 a game if they would. Say like that play was, it's a Hellman's Mayo first down or something.
Got it,
They mentioned it several times, and we haven't had one since then that I can think of,
yeah.
but.
When would we be allowing an outside company to survey our students via the internet?
We haven't that I'm aware of.
So do we want to
Or
include
we could
that?
just strike
We
this. if
could strike
wanted.
that one, right?
And I can't think of an instance where I've been solicited to. Use our students for market research.
Any thoughts on that one, Ed? With regard.
Yeah, I would strike it. I don't think it,
I'd like to just strike the whole thing for market research. I don't think parents are gonna appreciate our kids being
Yeah,
solicited for market research.
are you guys good with district administrator on both of those?
Yeah, so do we have to pick one or the other?
Either, yeah, it either goes to board approval or district administrator.
Yeah.
Oh,
administrator,
got it. And we're just leaving it at district administrator?
That's. Yeah, that's fine, I would rather
Yeah,
have that just to stay consistent within the district.
We have one for each company. They're well done.
You guys want these at? Currently, I don't know if these have come to the, well, I don't think they have come to the board, like this would be a name on a sign. Or on a display board.
I don't know, what are your thoughts on it, Ed?
I thought I remember we had somebody come in and wanted their name on, where they kept the score for basketball games, but I think that came and went.
I don't know, I feel like that level of advertising should maybe be a board decision.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I would agree with that.
I don't see
Yeah.
anything. Wrong with any of the others.
I mean, we don't own the school buses, so
No.
the only way we would be able to not permit that is by our contract with Durham.
Darling, yeah. But we can include that in there if Durham asks. If we don't want advertising on the outside of our buses, I don't care.
Yeah, to me, it doesn't matter, but they're not our buses, so
Yeah.
I've never thought about it. I mean, the only way, like I said, the only way we can enforce that is through our contract with Durham.
Yeah, because we don't have any other right.
Yeah.
I don't know if you legally can advertise on the outside of a public school bus, cause I've never seen it. City buses, you see it all the
Oh,
time.
yeah.
I've never seen it on a public school
In fact,
bus.
we're actively advertising
Right.
on city buses.
Mhm. I would recommend leaving the rest of those in there.
Okay.
God, their policies are so lengthy.
Final discretion regarding whether to advertise and the content and value of the materials will be with the board. Like, that's really vague. Whether to advertise?
Well, up above, it was subjected, like, if it's a semi-permanent or permanent advertisement, then it needs board approval.
Oh, any form of advertising on school grounds.
I think what this gives you is because a lot of this is going through the district administrator,
Right,
this still gives the board, whoops,
got it. It still
the
gives the
ability to
board-
say, hey, time out, Mr. Tadlock's judgment, we didn't agree with that.
Got it.
We realize he entered or gave you approval, but the board's now overruling it.
Yeah, okay.
So then you're not stuck with a contract from Coca-Cola that we didn't, the
Yeah.
board didn't like.
Okay,
So I like having that
yeah,
in
that's
there.
fine. Yes, they should all be in writing. Oh. Yeah. Yeah, it all looks good.
Are you okay if I strike that one? This is them trying to sell us their administrative guidance.
Oh. Shall prepare administrative guidelines addressing the criteria for commercial messages and the process by which advertising shall be accomplished.
Yeah, 'cause
What
we
is
didn't,
that attempting to do?
we didn't purchase their administrative guidelines.
Oh. Okay. So we'll strike that one.
Yeah.
They have these embedded, that's if you purchase their administrative guidance.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's try and do the last two.
Well, in the very last one, our Neola rep said most districts do not adopt
The veterans
as
ones?
classroom volunteers. Yes.
Okay,
So what's the next number?
high school diplomas to veterans.
Yep.
I'm like,
98.
this has gotta be a new thing, cause I'm like, I've never seen this before.
The one next to it.
Um.
I
I
don't
really-
think it's, I think this was more applicable back when you had the World War II vets who were sneaking into the military before they were 18 and before they were graduating.
Right,
In all my years, I've never had this come up.
right,
And now to serve, you have to have a high school diploma.
correct.
So I don't know,
Yeah, I'm
I mean,
fine
we could
with not
certainly-
adopting it. How about you?
Yeah, I don't think it's applicable anymore.
And then veterans serving as classroom volunteers? I didn't understand the purpose of this policy. It's just to award a certificate of achievement and appreciation who meets the following. Basically, they have to serve 20 hours in the classroom. I mean.
I'm
I
not
don't see
understanding
the,
purpose of it.
I don't see the purpose of adopting it.
Yep.
Either one of them.
I'd say there are some special veterans affair award. There must be, that's
must
the
be.
purpose of doing it. We've never tracked that before. I,
I mean, we have our own volunteer
Forms,
award
yeah.
system,
okay,
and we don't discriminate if they're a
So-
veteran or not.
yeah, don't adopt either 9800 or 98.
Yeah.
All right.
Agreed.
Okay. Do you wanna just leave it there, Ed, since we're almost at 12:30 and,
Yeah, I've got kind of a hard stop anyway, so.
yeah, okay,
Okay,
all right, we'll just start with, 1,000 administration series on the next,
Can we schedule our next meeting?
yeah, let's get that. I mean, who knows what Adam's schedule is gonna be
Yeah.
like, but. I think May for me is pretty booked, so I think we need to look at June.
We're gonna have some changes to the co-curricular code of conduct. And John Handel is not available the very first week in June.
Is the co-curricular code of conduct coming up separately from the Neola 1,000? Okay,
well, do we wanna,
but when does it have to be?
Ideally, we would have it prior to when annual registration opens, which is July 15th.
Oh.
So knowing that, you know, it goes to policy and then 2 readings with the school board,
Yeah,
it's a little bit of a tight timeline.
okay, I can tell you right now. I will not be at the June 9th. Board meeting.
Okay.
I will be landing in Milwaukee when the board meeting is started.
how about June? You said John's gone that whole first week? Well, I guess as long as we have it,
I mean, I'm available later that week, I'm just not available on the 9th.
what if we did the 23rd? That could still get on the meeting for the 23rd and the first.
As long as the board was comfortable putting that on the school board agenda, knowing we talk about it earlier in the day.
Oh, yeah, because it has to be approved by when? Which would mean it would have to
July
have 2
15th.
readings.
Oh, unless we wanted to look at Monday the 16th.
Yeah.
Because the board, let's see, July's board meeting would be the 14th, so the very next day. Assuming it's approved.
So
it
we
would
have
go-
to have 2 board meetings, which would give us June 23rd and July 14th.
Now, technically, our board policy says, with a
One
current
reading,
policy, we
fine.
only need 1 reading,
Oh,
if you're comfortable with that. Practice has
Okay.
always been to do 2.
right. And I thought I remembered reading that recently, that it was. We only have to do 1 if it's a current policy and we're just making a change to it, but our practice has always been 2.
Correct.
Well. If we did that, we'd have to make that known, that it's only gonna be 1.
We should probably move to a practice of just once on the current. Policies.
Right.
Just because, especially as once we get done in adopting the OLA.
Right,
There's so
Correct.
many updates that we're gonna wanna just be, yep, these are the updates.
yes,
We're doing 1 reading and, yeah.
right. Well, I'm fine for June 16th.
All right,
As long as I have a meeting at 1 o'clock, so,
I have an 11:30 meeting this.
all right.
Do
I'm fine.
Tuesdays work?
We do 10 a.m. 16.
Ed, would Monday at 10 o'clock on the 16th work for you?
Yes,
June 16th,
June 16th, yeah,
June 16th, yes,
okay.
10 o'clock,
yep,
okay. We'll just have to see if that works for Adam.
I'll send out an invite and I'll follow up with him.
All right. All right, thank you very much, Ed.
All right, thank you.
All right, take
Thanks,
care.
Ed, see you tonight.
Yep.